This was last year, and I remember kind of saying to her in one of those moments, I don't know which direction to go, and she's like, have you looked in the mirror? You're the direction. Like, look at your life. That's the direction.
We RAD Dads, bringing a soft edge to a hard topic. Join us every week as we talk to real people with real stories, from the everyday single parent to family professionals, and find entertainment along the way. Join me, Walter J. Eggers, as I discover and share wisdom. Positive changes start here.
Featured episode. Hello and welcome back again, Rad Dads. Walter here with you, and I'm feeling amazing. If you don't know, We Rad Dads is your resource for single, separated, divorced, and otherwise non-traditional dads. I am happy to have you. Thank you for joining us. To the new listeners, and for everyone who supported us along the way, I cannot thank you enough for making We Rad Dads what it is. I appreciate you listening, and I aim to bring you value and insight, a little bit of wisdom, and entertainment as well. If you find value, insight, wisdom, and or entertainment, I would appreciate you sharing this episode with your friends and other people who need to hear it. This is a featured episode. I'm on a hiatus right now. The season 1 of We Rad Dads has just come to a close, but I'm not going to leave you high and dry. This featured episode is now being rebroadcast from our archives. It's something that I found value in, and I hope you do too. Now, if you don't know, in episode 52, I highlighted the need to take a hiatus, reset, and restructure for We Rad Dads Season 2, which will launch in February 2017. In the meantime, I wanted to bring you something amazing. Speaking of value, if you don't know, quick links are available on the iTunes player. If you tap on the album art, the colorful We Rad Dads banner, on the iTunes player, it will uncover a short show notes section. And in those show notes, you'll have several links of things like our resources page, which has been redeveloped and features several podcasts and other resources that you may find helpful, like Amazon affiliates, which I would appreciate you using. Very simple to do, as a matter of fact. If you're going to buy anything on Amazon, go through the quick links there or on our show notes page and any page at www.weraddads.com. And what that does is allow you to make your purchase through Amazon and for We Rad Dads to collect a very small percentage of your purchase, which would normally go to Amazon. This is an excellent way to support our show and We Rad Dads without costing you a penny extra. Also featured in our resources page is our Audible trial. That's right. Go to audibletrial.com/WeRadDad or click on the quick links to get signed up for a free 30-day trial of audible.com. And not only that, you get a free book to boot. A new addition to the quick links is the episode 0. That's the origins of We Rad Dads. If you're new, this is for you. Okay, I didn't mean to rhyme that, but it works. Listen, if you want to know what We Rad Dads is all about and how I started and what we're headed towards, episode 0 is for you. It's a must listen. Go on over to the quick links, click on the link, and get started on that episode too. And now, to draw everything together, I've created a resource and a place for us to be and have conversations that we can't have elsewhere. It's a private Facebook group for We Rad Dads only. Join us. We're having amazing conversations over there, and we're helping guys left and right. The We Rad Dads that have joined are an amazing group of gentlemen, and I'm proud to be there right with you. So come on over and join us on the We Rad Dads Facebook group. During this hiatus, I'm looking forward to creating more resources, like the 7 Essentials download you will find if you go to the We Rad Dads home base at www.weraddads.com. This is a list of 7 essential things you need to do when becoming a single parent. I hope your new year is going great, and I hope to set the stage for a fantastic 2017. It's time to move yourself forward, and I'm right there with you. Now, without further ado, let's get to this week's featured episode.
Hello and welcome back again, Rad Dads. Walter Eggers with another absolutely amazing guest. And I went big. We're talking big. We're talking Hollywood big. I have with us today Rob Youngblood of StudioYoungblood.com. He's a communication leader and coach, a speaker, a business coach, and a self-proclaimed reality coach. Rob, thank you so much for joining me today.
Dude, thank you. It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Oh man, not as excited as I am. I didn't get into the whole.
Keep talking. You got my check. Huh?
Yeah, exactly. Well, no, here's the thing. It's like you're a legitimate celebrity, and I want to point one thing out, one thing that stood out, because there's a couple here, but MacGyver. Oh my gosh, you were a MacGyver.
I was on MacGyver, and it was long enough ago that if you find it, I'm sure it's on the internet somewhere. And I played a cowboy hitman of all things, and I had a mullet and an accent and a hat and the whole. Oh yeah, it was pretty cool.
Having a mullet, wasn't that like a prerequisite to be on MacGyver?
It was.
Awesome.
I had a serious mullet in the early '90s. Oh yeah, and here's the thing. Unlike most people who have mullets, my mullet was documented on many television shows, so there's no hiding it.
That's right. You had quite an illustrious career through the 90s. You know, you were on other shows that I actually watched for, what was it, Sequest? Sequest was something that I loved.
Yeah.
Smoke Jumpers movie, Walker, Texas Ranger. Like, you work with Chuck Norris? That is epic.
You know, it's one of those things I can proudly say that Chuck Norris has kicked my butt. Yep. Yep.
And you survived. Oh my God.
And I survived. And here's the funny thing on the Walker Texas Ranger thing, you'll laugh at this. So I played a bad guy. I played a lot of bad guys back in the day. And one of my henchmen was Eric Estrada.
No way.
So Eric Estrada and I both got our butt. He was my like right-hand henchman. And we both got our butt kicked by Chuck Norris.
And this was post Chips, right?
This was post Chips. This was Walker. I did Walker in like mid to late 90s, maybe. Yeah.
Wow. JAG, NYPD, General Hospital. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. So it's really nice to have a true bona fide and Emmy award winning, by the way, celebrity with us, joining us here on the We Rad Dads podcast. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So we went over this a little bit more. Well, I guess we'll dive into it a little bit later. First, let's get to know you at your level here. So, I would say tell us about yourself, but there's so much. So why don't you just give us a snapshot of who and where you are today?
Well, I am proudly a single dad, hence why I'm here.
Yeah, of course.
And my son just turned 9 in March and just started 4th grade actually today. And we live in Nashville. We live in a small town called Franklin, which is kind of a suburb of Nashville, just south of Nashville. We've been in Nashville for about 6.5 years. And I have had my son, been a single dad. I've had him since he was 14 months. So, 8 years. And his mom lives in Indianapolis. She and I are actually very, very good friends. And it's just a circumstance, everybody instantly when they say, dad has custody, what the hell did mom do? And I tell people all the time, mom didn't do anything. It's just how life worked out, and she's a good person. She's a great mom. She sees him whenever she likes. She's not that far away. It's about a 5-hour drive. And we, a lot of our friends kind of jokingly call us the poster children for divorce because we get along so well. She'll come and visit, because he's in school, he's not traveling a lot to her. So she'll come visit during the school year and she stays here. She stays at our house for 4 or 5 days. We go to dinner. We are a family. And one of the things we're very proud of, and I'm very proud of, is, we have a son who still has a tight family. And as we just tell him all the time, it's just a different looking family, still a family, a very strong family.
Yeah.
And arguably a stronger family than a lot of people I know who are married.
Yes.
But it's just different.
Yeah.
And so he gets that and and he's cool with it, and that's his life and everything is good. So yeah, we're in Nashville and he's my main man. He's mini me, looks like a mini version of me. It's pretty frightening.
That's phenomenal. I can't imagine it was always, this good as a family unit, but we'll get there, I'm sure.
Yeah, it was not, and we'll get there. Yes.
Well, first of all, I want to congratulate you for being a successful single dad, owning the custody and doing it to the fullest of your abilities. I know that with work in that industry is probably not an easy thing to do. So thank you for your sacrifices and being the poster child who you are today.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. It's important. I mean, I think it's hugely important. I mean, I think that it's, I just do it because it's what I do and I couldn't imagine doing anything else. But I think I'm a huge proponent of dads stepping up and doing the right thing, and especially in non-traditional roles.
Yes.
We usually always see that moms are the ones, and moms get custody, and it's the single mom, and and unfortunately the picture of single dads is not always as positive. I think it's a big deal to show what it can be.
Well, I'm sure you've seen it, and we've talked about iterations through generations as far as, what was on TV at the time. And we touched on that earlier in our pre-conversation, but it seems to be more frequently common that dads are the bumbling idiot stereotype, and on TV currently as well. It's changing a little bit, but it's still pretty much that hilarious bumbling idiot dad. So thank you for helping myself and us other rad dads out there break that stereotype in the positive way.
Yeah, well, I've had my bumbling moments, I will admit.
We all have. I think that's a parent thing, like it doesn't matter your gender. You're a bumbling parent at points.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. That's exactly right.
That's so awesome. And you alluded, actually, you let the cat out of the bag on one point here, but with the mullet. But can you tell us about, an interesting fact about yourself, maybe something that people just don't know about you?
Ooh, that's good. An interesting, there's, if you want to, a current one or going back.
It's your choice.
And gosh, an interesting fact. Wow.
There's got to be more than a bunch. So that's you're having trouble picking which one. That's the problem.
I'm trying to think. We talked about it a little bit. It's a funny fact. I've actually on television proudly, I was once, speaking of dads, I was actually Charlton Heston's son.
Wow.
In an episode of Sequest, as we talked about earlier. And the funny thing was, yes, and I was a merman. And that's comedy. Wow. We were actually on this, and I'm sure a lot of viewers won't remember, but there was a Steven Spielberg produced a show back in the 90s called Sequest.
Loved it.
And it was, it was like Jules Verne's and everything. It was under the sea, right? And so, funny story. At the time, I was doing a lot of work, and life was good. And this kind of goes off into a funny story, but you'll appreciate it. So, my agent at the time called and said, there's this show and we don't think you should do it. It's a small role and we don't think you should do it. And I said, okay. So the casting director knew me personally and called me at home and said, you should really come do this. And I said, well, why? And she's like, just trust me. You should come do this. And I said, okay. And it was very secretive.
Yeah.
And so I agreed to do it against my agent's recommendation. I agreed to do it. It wasn't a lot of money, and I was really starting to make a name for myself. And the stupid thing in Hollywood is you start climbing the ladder. They're very big on don't take a step back. You want to keep doing bigger and bigger and bigger.
Of course.
And I'm like, no, I'm going to do this because the casting director's a friend, so I do it. So I show up on the set the first day, and I find out after I agreed to do it, then I find out it's Steven Spielberg and it's a brand new show. So, okay, that's a win right there, right?
Yeah, totally.
So I show up the first day at Universal and find out that I'm playing a merman. And the whole time, and there's video of this. There's actually video on my Facebook page. It's pretty funny. Of the whole time I'm in white spandex with a ponytail. I can't make this up. It was the mullet pulled into a ponytail. And I'm in white spandex because we're a merman. And so the first day of shooting, somebody comes over and says, Rob, we'd like you to meet the gentleman who's playing your father. And I'm like, great. And so I turn the corner and there's Charlton Heston.
Wow.
And, it's Moses, right? It's Ben-Hur. It's Charlton Heston.
He's an icon.
Exactly. And so I'm like, holy crap. And he comes up to me and he sticks out his hand. And I said, Mr. Heston, it's really nice to meet you. And he says, in that voice, he says, call me Chuck. And I'm thinking, I can't call you Chuck. You're Moses.
Yeah.
So we're sitting there talking, and I'm, getting to know him and whatever. And I said to him at one point, trying to think how to nicely say it. And it's like, so Mr. I wanted to say to him, why the heck are you doing television? But I didn't say it that way. Right. So we kind of nicely talk about it. And I said, so, why are you doing this? And he looks at me, he says, well, Steven called me and wanted a favor. I'm like, well, of course, Steven Spielberg called you and wanted a favor.
Yeah.
Well, so the funny punchline is not only did I end up doing this, and I had 2 or 3 little scenes with Charlton Heston, it was fun, but for whatever reason, Hollywood technical reasons, the show got delayed. And what happens is when they delay production on a show, if you're under contract, they still have to pay you. And I was under contract. So the funny end of that story is not only was it Charlton Heston and nobody wanted to do this and it wasn't much money, I ended up being put on hold for like 3 weeks, and I kid you not, made like $34,000.
Wow.
Which, because they have to pay you per union rules, they have to pay you all this hold money. So I'm sitting at home doing nothing, but they had to pay me to keep me employed because they had to pay me from basically keeping you from going to do other work, right?
Right.
And so all these, and it just keeps doubling and growing. It's like pyramid, just keeps growing. And so, in white spandex, playing Charlton Heston's son, and left with a mighty big check.
That's an incredible windfall, by the way. And this is like, from what we were talking about earlier, this is your story. You just keep putting your best foot forward and you make the best of your situation and you just keep leveling up.
It just keeps, so that was a long answer to your tell me something we don't know.
Oh, I dig it. That is absolutely incredible. And we will have a clip. If that's on YouTube, I'm going to have a clip on the show notes at www.weraddads.com.
You can actually go to, and you can actually, it's actually on my Facebook page. I pulled, because it's not on, I couldn't find it on YouTube, but I'll tell you a funny story. Yeah. It was on Netflix one night.
Yeah.
And so I actually recorded it off of Netflix, and just there's a scene with he and I that is I actually stuck on my Facebook page because the only place I could find it was on Netflix. So I recorded it with my phone off the television. It's amazing looking quality, but I recorded it, and so I put it on. You can pull it off of my Facebook page. It's pretty funny. And the kicker is, so this was probably a couple of years ago, and I showed it to my son, and I stopped it, and I'm like Netflix. I'm like, look, he used to always say this all the time. I stopped it and I'm like, look, buddy, it's Dad. Dad's on the show. And he looks up from his iPad, and like perfect comic timing without missing a beat, he glances up and he looks at it and he says, no, that guy was younger and thinner.
Ouch.
And I'm like, wow, dude, weren't we all? Yeah.
The mouths of babes. Oh my gosh.
Exactly.
Truth. Just nothing but truth. Oh, yeah. Well, thank you. That's a really awesome backstory, and I'm sure there's no shortage of really awesome Hollywood stories.
Yeah, it was a fun time. Lots of good stuff.
Do you have speaking of Hollywood, I ask this of most people, but is there a pop culture thing that, no matter where you're at, if you're in a bad kind of frame of mind, if you need to get perked up, like a stupid, ridiculous movie that always makes you laugh, is there something like that for you? What is your go-to?
Yeah, I probably have two or three. I love some goofy stuff. I'll watch Caddyshack a lot.
Yes.
Because I'm a golfer as well, so I love Caddyshack and can, recite all the lines and all of that stuff. So Caddyshack is always one of the funnies if it stops. And I'll tell you another one that's kind of random, and it's not a hugely funny movie, but it's just something about it, is Bull Durham.
Bull Durham. Okay, another golf movie, right?
No, Bull Durham's baseball.
Is it baseball?
It's an early Kevin Costner, and it's just a funny, and I don't know, there's something about it that it takes place in the minor leagues back in the 80s, and it's like back when baseball was kind of pure and whatnot, and it's just, and it's a romantic comedy. It's Kevin Costner and Susan Sarandon, but it's just one of those, I'll stick it on and kind of veg out and stare at it. But Caddyshack would be the funny one that I almost always go to.
Early Bill Murray.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm embarrassed, by the way, that I didn't know Bull Durham was a baseball movie. Of course,
that's okay. Now you'll go watch it. Now you'll go look for it this weekend.
Exactly. Wow. So, okay. Well, I'm going to dive into some the words of motivation that I go accompany most, if not all, episodes with, and it's a quote from Charles Schwindel. It says, "Life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you react to it." How does that resonate with you in your life currently, Rob?
Oh gosh, totally. I mean, that's that's so much what I live, and it's so much what I preach and teach and coach and practice and all that stuff. Along the lines of, I'm a big believer in, and the only thing you can really control, and you can't even fully control that, but is yourself, Yes. And one of the things I constantly teach, whether it's my son or whether it's a client, is you can't control the world. You can't control what's going to happen. There are going to be days that are just going to be crappy, and you can't change that. But what you can change is how you deal with it. Yes. And the perfect example is going through a divorce, is going through, custody battles or whatever it is. And, we talked briefly about it, but I couldn't change the fact that, I got a divorce and his mother and I split up, and, nobody goes in wanting that. That's not the ideal situation. You can't change that. Yeah. You can't change what happened. But what you can change is the story. And you can, as we talked about, my hashtag with everything, own your story. You can change how you own and deal with it from there on. So you're saying, and your motivation there, I agree and live that 100% in the fact of every day, who knows what's going to happen. But what matters is where you go with it and how you react to it and how you own it. And, it's really easy to go through life. I constantly say that, it's easy to have a crappy attitude. It takes work to be positive and find the good.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's funny how many just absolutely negative people there are surrounding you. It is in fact so easy to go down that negative rabbit hole. That's all you do here. But when you become that voice, it's funny because when you do finally turn that corner on yourself, so to speak, and start seeing the silver linings in your situation and you actually feel better. It's like a weight gets lifted off you, and the people around you either move out of your life or they come with you. And it's really cool.
And you hit it on the head. It's a weight lifted off you. And I so believe that. And I try to live with that. My big word is integrity and all of those things, because it is a weight, and while it may be harder to kind of walk that, not righteous path, but I always try to tell people to constantly try to take the high road. Yeah, it's harder, but you're right. It is such a weight lifted off of you. You may not always like what I say, or you may not always like me, but if I can look you in the face and feel like I've done right by you and I've told you the truth, and even if you don't agree with me, but I've done right by you, I don't have that burden on my shoulders that I've screwed somebody over, per se.
Right. And some people don't have that conscious, but I know I do. And I feel good being a good person. And sometimes I get taken advantage of, but by and large, it's outweighed exponentially by all the good things that I'm trying to do in my own life, my son's life, and the people around me.
Absolutely. Without a doubt. I mean, I always know my inner compass, and, trust me, I'm no angel. I mean, I've gone through, periods where I haven't done anything majorly bad, but, I've been for lack of a better word, I've certainly been a dickhead at one point or another in my life. And I'm sure I have 2 or 3 ex-girlfriends that would say so. But ultimately you learn from that, and you if you're smart, you do. And I mean, I still every day make mistakes. And one of my biggest pieces of advice that I give, especially in a parenting situation, but I give it to myself, I give it to my son, I give it to everybody, is, nobody expects you to be perfect. They expect you to be present.
Bam.
Bam.
That's awesome. Bam.
Bam.
That's awesome.
I live by that, and I tell parents that all the time, and especially working with dads and working with moms, and I tell them all the time, look, your kids don't care if you're perfect. They don't care if you screw up. They care if you're there. They care if you're involved. They don't want another damn toy, and even at Christmas, I kind of have a meme that I joke. They don't want more presents. Yeah. They want more presence.
Presence, as in being there physically.
Exactly.
And more than just physically, obviously. If you're going to sit them on the couch and be in the same room with them, that's not the same thing. It's interaction.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Be in the moment. Be there. Be with them. Get what's going on. Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I was going to quip earlier, but do you think that that's why you got cast as a bad guy so often? Is because you were the bad?
Well, it's funny. So I wasn't a bad guy a lot early on, and then I don't remember what the first role was I got because I couldn't get cast as a bad guy, actually.
Huh.
And I was always like a, romantic leading man and a lot of stuff, early on. And so I'm trying to think. I can't remember exactly the turning point, but some job, some movie or some TV role, I got cast as a bad guy, and it went really well. And I was really good. And everybody's like, wow, we didn't know you could be such an ass. So I'm like, this was kind of fun.
It's too easy.
Yeah, right? Because,
yeah.
It's and you'll talk to a lot of actors who, playing the nice guy is kind of boring. It's playing the villain, playing the bad guy that's fun.
Yeah.
And so I went through a phase there from like Walker, Texas Ranger, and I did NYPD Blue, and then I was on General Hospital for a year, and my character was just horrible on General Hospital. And then, so I did these things, and was like, yeah, this bad guy stuff's kind of fun.
Did you find any correlation one way or the other when it comes to acting as opposed to your regular life, where this bad guy, kind of manifested in one way or the other from one area to the other? So I don't know your backstory entirely, but did your bad guy characters bleed over into your personal life?
I don't know, not so much. I mean, I was lucky. I had the ideal childhood. My parents were fantastic. They've both since passed, but they were married forever. I grew up in the Midwest. Everything. I had a Norman Rockwell upbringing.
Yeah.
I was fortunate. I was hugely fortunate, and I think if anything, just the opposite. For me, I was always a good guy. I mean, I got in trouble like I was 18-year-old, chasing girls and sneaking beer and doing whatever every 18-year-old does. But by and large, I was a good guy. I did the right thing, and I was a good kid, good student, all that stuff. So I think the funny thing was with the bad guy stuff, it kind of like gave me an outlet for this evil twin guy who really wanted to be the big bad kid all the time, but because that was never me. But so getting to play those, it was kind of fun because I could just let go and this alter ego.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, that's great. I didn't know the parallels, but hey, let's dive into it. Let's get into what I call the bomb crater. And it's something that when your life basically explodes, it blows everything off the map and there's a hole. You're standing at rock bottom and all you can see is the sky above you and the fact that you're in a hole. So Rob, with regards to being a single dad, what was your bomb crater? What happened to you?
My dad dying instantly. To kind of give you a little backstory, if I can, on that. So, you and I talked about it. I had a very successful career as an actor up until 2002, and was just tired of Hollywood, was tired of the business, and decided I wanted to leave. I wanted to quit the business. And funny enough, at the time, way before I was married, I was dating a woman who was an anchor at CNN, just out of coincidence at the time. And I was sick of Hollywood. I was sick of the business. I was working, but I was sick of the business. And I said, I want to leave. And so she said, what are you going to do? And I said, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know. I've always done TV. I don't know what I'm going to do. And so I sold everything. I sold my house in LA. I put everything in storage. And my dad was a fantastic man. My dad was best man at my wedding years later.
Wow.
And my parents, so I was in my early 30s, and my dad said, well, come home. So I put all my stuff in storage. I moved back to Indiana, stayed at my parents' house on their, guest room for like 3 months as I figured out my life. But, to cut to the chase there, eventually stopped dating the girl from CNN. But the girl at CNN is the one who pushed me into television news, because I was like, okay, what am I going to do? Well, the only thing I've ever done is TV, so I'll go in news. And everybody said, oh, you can't do that. Well, cut to the chase. A year later, I was anchoring and reporting for the Fox affiliate in Indianapolis. So I met my ex-wife. We went through all these things. I started climbing the food chain in news, in that side of television. And we were living in Charleston at the time, and I was working for CBS. And looking back in retrospect, it's taken a lot of time for me over the years to get to the point of finding exactly what you said. That's a great way to, where the bomb hit. I can remember it like it was yesterday. We were in the IHOP parking lot in Mount Pleasant, which is a suburb of Charleston. We had breakfast. We had been to the doctor. We had found out we were pregnant, my wife and I.
Yeah.
And called my parents in Indiana to tell them. And my dad had been at the doctor. And as soon as we pretty much finished telling my parents that they were going to be grandparents and we were pregnant, my mom told me that my dad had stage 4 lung cancer.
Whoa.
They were in Indiana finding this out. We were in Charleston finding out our news, literally at the same time.
That juxtaposition of emotion had to be just wrenching.
It was. And so we stayed in Charleston. My dad got very bad very quickly. As it turned out, our son was born 8 weeks premature. So he was fine, thank goodness, and he is fine, but we had all those complications. And so pretty much as soon as my son was able to travel, because my dad really got bad really quickly, and my son was born, and 2 months after he was born, the doctor said he was okay to travel. We moved, my ex and I quit working for CBS in Charleston. We moved back to Indiana to be with my dad. Literally kind of same story. We moved into my parents. Now we had a baby. We had a brand new baby. Yeah. We moved into my parents' house, into their guest room, because I just wanted to be with my father. ended up luckily getting a job again at CBS in Indianapolis anchoring. But we were there. We got back there in August, we got back there in July. I started working in August. My dad passed in March. And my dad passed, literally, the story is, and it's one of those kind of heart-wrenching stories. My dad was very, very sick. We knew he was going to die. My son's birthday is March 26th. And my dad was in the hospital, almost on life support, could hardly talk, nothing. And it was the middle of the day on March 26th. And my dad pulled me, and we were by his side the whole time. And my dad pulled me close because he could barely speak. And he whispered to me, "I'm not going to die on that kid's birthday." And he held on till 5 a.m. the next morning. My son turned 1 on March 26th. My dad passed on March 27th.
Wow.
And 6 weeks after that, I filed for divorce. 3 months after that, I found out my mother was very ill. So, in retrospect now, that's where I look back and go, Jesus, that's where the train went off the rails. And I didn't handle it. I'm the first to admit I didn't handle it well at all. I had never dealt with any real tragedy. I had never dealt with anything major bad in my life. And I went from living really this fantastic, blessed life to within 6 months, lost my dad, filed for divorce, found out my mom was terminally ill.
That piling of emotions is just more. I've been in a situation, not to that degree, but similar, with so many emotional elements, and I know exactly that feeling. It's that sense of loss, but you want to do something, but you're just powerless, and it's gut wrenching.
And I was, and on top of powerless, I was clueless.
Yeah.
And looking back, I had no clue how to handle it. I didn't handle it well. It was not a great time in my life. My ex and I were fighting, obviously. My dad passes, my mom. My contract came up at CBS, and by my own admission, I had a cushy job. I was anchoring the 10 and 11 o'clock news, was making a lot of money. Everything was great, blah, blah, blah. I didn't renew the contract. My head was not on straight. I walked away from a massive paycheck. I walked away from all kinds of stuff, and everybody telling me I was absolutely, clueless. And if you want to talk about those times when somebody was a dickhead, that was me. I mean, I went through a year or two where nobody was going to tell me anything. Life smacked me up the side of the head, and I just didn't have a clue. Just didn't handle it well, didn't have a clue, and just went off the deep end.
Wow. At that point, you were definitely in a stage of grief. What was it? Denial or anger?
Who knows? It was the whole 9 yards. You know what I mean? Looking back now, it was everything. It was just denial, grief, anger, pissed off, you name it. It was there. Excuse me. And nothing. And that started. And then my ex and I kind of started a custody battle, which wasn't pretty, and as they never usually are, and all of that stuff. But yeah, that was it. I mean, looking back, and then the second part, and so it'd been a tough few years. And then my mom got ill, and my mom actually hung on for a while. My mom just passed about a year and a half ago.
Sorry.
Thank you. And that was kind of almost. It was like a bomb that dropped, but it took 6 years for it to fully hit between everything. My dad, and then the year-long custody battle, and then moving, and then career changes. And then the last 2 years of my mom's life, I had moved her to Nashville and helped take care of her because I didn't want her to be alone in Indiana, and, all those things. And then my mom passing, and it really just was, okay, wow, well, this has been a sucky 6 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, you look back now and I hear you laughing, but I know the turmoil associated with that. And there's a lot of rad dads out there listening right now going, I can relate. I can relate to that. And I'm going to go out on a limb here. I'm going to say that probably, there was probably a little bit more of kind of blindly stumbling through the dark at that point. And at what point did you finally pick your head up above the bomb crater and go, where am I? What am I doing? Where am I? I got to make a change.
Oh yeah. I mean, there wasn't a little stumbling. There was a lot of stumbling. And that kind of came honestly after my mom passed. It was that long. I mean, life was fine. I was still working. I was successful. You had mentioned in the meantime, after my dad passed, I moved to Nashville. Still did a lot of television stuff. I produced and hosted the #1 show actually on Outdoor Channel for a couple of seasons. I was still working in television. I was still doing all that stuff. But to be really honest with you, I wasn't facing a hell of a lot of reality, to be perfectly honest. I was going through motions and life was fine. I knew my mom was dying. My son and I had it. The one saving grace was my son, and still is my son,
yes.
But was my son constantly. My ex and I worked through our crap and got to a point slowly but surely. It took a good 2 to 3 years where we got, okay. And now it's very good. But honestly, so what happened was I guess it's been about 2 years ago. I was doing a lot of coaching and I was still dabbling in that, but it wasn't serious because I was still doing mostly television. And, I took a job for ABC News that I didn't want to take, that it was thrown at me. This was 2 years ago this summer. So it was the summer of 14 and it was thrown at me. I didn't want to take it. It wasn't the right fit. Nothing about it was right, but they kept throwing more money and they kept throwing more money. And I was just blindly in that spot of, I didn't know what to do and clueless about where to go. And so honestly, I chased a paycheck and I had life slap me in the face in the sense of, so my son and I moved to the West Coast from Nashville. And we were there for 2 months, and my mom was going to come with us. And in that kind of very similar to the Charleston situation, we went to the West Coast for 2 months and found out, again, my mom took a huge turn for the worse. And it went from my mom being stable to them giving my mom weeks to live. So I was 2 months into a new contract with CBS. I quit the job. I came back to take care of my mom, got back here in Nashville in September. We moved my mom into a nursing home. She went off the deep end very quickly. I was now fighting ABC was trying to sue me for breach of contract. All of this. And I was basically telling them to, go F themselves because I was like, I didn't care. I'm taking care of my mother. Well, so we moved my mom into a nursing home and my mom passed away on New Year's Eve, 3 months later. And I tell people this all the time. So you ask when the moment was. I then spent the first 2 or 3 months of 2015, honestly, just in a daze, staring at a wall and not kind of knowing what to do. And I tell people, as bad as it is when you lose your first parent, it's 10 times worse when you lose your second parent because you don't have any more.
Yeah, I'm terribly sorry for that loss, and in that way, especially.
It was tough, yeah. And I was, again, I was hugely close to my parents. They were married 51 years before my dad passed.
Yeah.
And so I was just in a daze. And so to kind of get back to answer your question, I had a number of close friends. And so early last year, I didn't know what to do. And I had a number of close friends, including my ex-wife and a couple of friends of mine who are television producers on the West Coast and this, that, and the other. And I had a number of people go, you know what? Why don't you go back to coaching? Why don't you hardcore go into speaking and coaching? Because you're so strong at communicating. That's what you've done your whole life. You've spent your entire life on television, on stage, all of that. And you've got so many stories, and just from a teaching standpoint, why don't you go into speaking and teaching and coaching? And I thought, okay, whatever. And I kind of dabbled in it. Well, in one of those kind of meant to be moments, I kind of half-assed it. But before I knew it, 2015, my phone was ringing, and I kind of half threw it out there, not wholeheartedly, like I'll see. And sure enough, boom, 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 boom. Started getting clients, started getting requests, did some things, did some seminars, did some stuff, put out feelers to people I'd known forever. And, and they started going, oh my God, yeah, that's a natural fit. That's fantastic. So it was, honestly, a little over a year ago, early 15, where I kind of finally, after 6-7 years, and the final straw being losing my mom, where I took that look in the mirror and said, Jesus, all right, life's different and life's tough and life's not what you expected, but now's the time to, put on your big boy pants
yeah,
and figure it out.
There it is. I mean, that is the moment when you made that change. And that, from that point, #own your story was born.
Yes, and I started truly owning it, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what it was. I mean, that's so much of what it was. Obviously, my story, obviously, as well, everybody, but it's what defined me, and I'm sitting here spending a lot of time feeling sorry for myself, dealing with loss, dealing with all these things, and realizing all of these things, all of my 30 years in television and on stage and in this arena, combined with my stories as a parent and as a son and as, as somebody who'd gone through divorce and all of these things, boom, there was my story. And I remember saying to my ex-wife, and we're close at this point. This was last year. And I remember kind of saying to her in one of those moments, I don't know which direction to go, and she's like, have you looked in the mirror? You're the direction. Like, look at your life. That's the direction. And it was like, wow, okay, I see what you're saying. Okay. Wow. And she's like, between your resume and your stories and, and now what you've lived through with, the death and loss and divorce and, coming out on the other side and all of this stuff. And she was right. She was one of those people that kicked me in the butt and said, you don't need to go looking for something. What you're looking for is right in front of you. Look in the mirror.
Yeah. Yeah, you are something.
And that's where that story, that whole own your story, and that's what I preach to so many of my clients is look in the mirror. Whether the story's good or bad doesn't matter. But the minute you start realizing, stop trying to be somebody else, stop trying to, I say that all the time. So many people are looking, the buzzword is, let's be authentic. And so many people are thinking, okay, I got to go look for my authentic self. And I tell people, if you think you got to go looking for it, you're missing the point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good, bad, or ugly, your authentic self is looking in the mirror.
Yeah. It's accepting it. It's seeing it. It's after years of pushing it aside. And I've been there, man. I have been there so many times. I had so many opportunities to see it. And I never did until I went through these tribulations, like you, and then finally decided enough's enough.
Mm-hmm. And then owning it. And then purely for good or bad, owning it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny. This epiphany actually came from your once arch enemy. The villain in your story, to a degree, your ex-wife. Who is now an asset and a comrade.
Absolutely. And I tell people that all the time, it's kind of closing, not closing doors and not closing yourself off to life. And it goes back to my whole thing, which is we talked about earlier, it's communication. Everything starts with that, and I kind of one of my little catchphrases, my little mantras, and I tell people this all the time, but it's all over my website, is the minute you start communicating better, first with yourself and then with everyone else, is the minute you start changing your life.
Yeah.
And the minute I looked at my ex-wife, and yeah, we both did that, and we both screwed up, and all of those things. It's always a two-way street. But the minute I put my ego aside and I put my manness aside, and I'm not saying to stop being a man, I'm still alpha male, but I think it defines more alpha male that the minute I put my ego aside and looked at my ex-wife and said, you know what, I'm sorry. For whatever I did in this, I'm sorry. We both screwed up, but for my part, I'm sorry. Let's move forward and figure this out.
That's great that you were able to come forward and it was accepted and reciprocated. That's the part that you mentioned earlier. You don't have control over that.
Right. But I had control, and she may have told me to go jump off of a bridge.
Yeah,
who knows?
Yeah.
But what I knew was I couldn't go forward until I could look at myself and look at my son, knowing that I went to the situation and did the right thing and tried to make it right and owned it. She could have told me, go F yourself and never talk to me again. Yeah. And I couldn't control that.
Right.
But what I could control was looking her in the eye and saying, you know what? I know I screwed up. And for whatever part of this is mine, I'm sorry. And I'd like to make it better.
Yeah, you have direct control over that. And I think owning that to, again, your arch enemy previous, I think that bill shows so much character. You mentioned integrity earlier. I mean, it showcases that. That is the formula for establishing that and moving forward as a connected co-parenting style family that you've now fostered. And another thing is I didn't realize this was so recent.
Yeah. Yeah, we've been, let's see, we've been officially divorced for, 7 years.
Right,
yeah.
Right. But you mentioned it 2015, that was basically the point of time, early 2015, you kind of picked your head up and goes, okay, now I'm going to make my life better. So this is fairly recent. It sounds like you're hugely successful at it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, life was always good. It was just a matter of frankly getting out of my own stupid way.
Yeah, yeah.
But dealing with a lot of stuff, and I still deal with it. And I still, people could go, oh, you've got it all figured out. I'm like, I don't have it figured out. I'm figuring it out as I go. It's no different than parenting. And this. I mean, I have a great relationship with my son, and everybody comes to us and says, oh my God, he's wonderful. I'm like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do tomorrow, though, but I know we'll figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. I think everybody wants that, the quick prescription pill or whatever it is, the quick fix, and it's not. It's a constant moving, dynamic thing. And you just got to have the faith and wherewithal to know that you can handle it and you can do it. It just takes a little bit of work.
That's the thing, and I tell clients all the time, because everybody, when they want coaching, they always, so many of them start with, okay, can you fix my problems? And I always say, no, I can't. They look at me like, what? I'm like, no, because here's the thing. I don't know what your problems are going to be in 6 months, and neither do you.
Yeah.
But what I can do and what you're going to learn to do is I jokingly use the metaphor of, okay, I'm going to give you an empty toolbox.
Yep.
And as we work together, I'm going to give you a hell of a lot of tools. I'm going to give you a hammer and a saw and a screwdriver and a drill and all of this stuff. And I'm not going to build the house. I can't build the house, but I'm going to give you every tool you need to build that house.
Yeah, absolutely. And everyone's situation is different. Maybe some people are plumbers. Right. Maybe some people are framers. Maybe some people are drywallers, right? Those are different tools. Yep. So you need to acquire the right tools for your job specifically.
Yeah, and learn how to, and I guide people in the sense of, no, I can't fix your problems, and you don't want me to fix your problems. It's the old fisherman thing, teach the guy to fish. Totally. But it's like, no, I'll guide you, and I'll give you advice, and you'll learn how to do it, but you're going to be stronger because you're going to have to learn how to deal with anything that it throws at you. And I don't have a clue what life's going to throw at you in a year. But I know if I do my job well and you have your act together, whatever life does throw at you, you'll figure it out.
Awesome. That's a mic drop moment right there. And it's so true. Nice. Quick wrap up on this segment here. But if you could teleport back to you at your worst moment, hand yourself something, say something to yourself, provide some sort of resource to encourage your healing process, maybe quicker or better, what would it be?
It would always be the truth and integrity. And if the moments I have screwed up in my life, and, unfortunately, I hate to admit there have been more than one, but whenever I screwed up in life, it always came, and I look back in retrospect, I always know if I'd have stood up, walked with integrity, done the right thing, even when it wasn't popular, and made the right choice, it'd have been fine.
Yeah.
And I'm such a big believer that we all have a great gut, but most of the time we don't listen to it. And I know that so many of my biggest mistakes in life, my gut was telling me one thing and I didn't listen to it and I did the other thing. And so it would be truth and integrity. I mean, if there's ever anything that's got me in trouble, it's not been taking the high road. So I'd look back at myself and say, I would always tell myself, you know what, if that's the one thing, I would always say, even when it's tough, take the high road.
Well said. And I think we have learned, I have myself, I could speak only for me, but I have learned to not listen to my gut, to do what's popularly correct. And that is almost never the right way.
And it never is. No, I mean, and I strongly believe if, we all have a great gut. The problem is we've layered it with years of listening to outside sources and listening to the lies we tell ourselves and listening to what's popular and what's easy that we can't live with the gut. And I to this day, I still, my constant quest almost daily is to diffuse all the crap and get back to my gut and follow those instincts. And, they very rarely, if ever, are wrong. Yeah. They may not be easy, and they may not be popular, but they're not wrong.
Yeah, that's the reward in doing that kind of hard work. It's going to be hard work any way you go, but the rewards are going to be so much greater if you do the good hard work.
Yeah, and you got to do the work. That's the other thing. You got to show up. You got to do the work. It ain't going to be easy, but you got to do the work.
Yeah, awesome. Well said. And I'm going to pivot us into kind of a quick Q&A segment here. And it's just a couple of questions that I got together for you specifically as a dad.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
As a dad. So,
okay.
What is your best dad superpower or skill?
Communicating, talking. I mean, that's even when he was young and he fully didn't get it. I'm a huge believer in talking to your kid and talking to them not necessarily like they're a kid, but talking to them as a human.
Oh man.
And looking them in the eye and working through problems and saying, even if they can't articulate it, they're young. They may not be able to tell you exactly how they quote feel, but talking to them and letting them know that you're there with them and I'm definitely a parent, but I'm also a friend. But I'm a big believer in if you can walk that path with them, not the whole kind of over them and I'm the boss, I'm the parent, you're the child, but show them, hey, we're in this together and communicate. I think it's huge.
Yeah, absolutely. Communication as part of that presence. I think that's just so key. And you touched on something that a lot of people don't talk about is treating your children like the adults that you want them to become. I mean, age specific, obviously, but don't treat them like the children they are. Treat them like the people you want them to be.
Exactly. And, and along those lines, I let him make choices. And people early on thought I was nuts. Like, when he was 5 years old and he wanted to stay up till wherever. For instance, we don't have a bedtime in our house. And people think I'm crazy. What do you mean you don't have a bedtime? He's exhausted. Well, when he was 5 or 6 or whatever, he's like, Dad, I want to stay up. And I'm like, stay up.
Yeah.
He's like, really? And I said, yeah. So he stayed up till like 1 a.m, whatever it was. Well, guess what? The next morning when he had to get up to go to school, he was exhausted.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's one thing for me to, teach him and say, go to bed. And I tell him. It's another thing for him to not go to bed and learn why you should be.
Yeah.
And learn for himself. Now, obviously age appropriate, like you said, I'm not going to let him go play in traffic, but it's letting him find his way. For instance, like we eat pretty well. He doesn't do Coke or any of that kind of soda stuff. But like when he wants to, if we're in a restaurant, he's like, Dad, I think I want a Coke. I'm like, okay, go ahead and get one. And he'll start to get one. And then he'll look at me and he's like, yeah, it's probably not a good choice, is it? And I'm like, probably not, but you can go ahead and make that choice.
Yeah.
And we've always been that way in the sense of, okay, you start to learn choices, not because I tell you to do something, but you learn what it means and the ramifications and all of those things. And there's very little I have to do with him. We don't have, there's not much discipline. We jokingly have almost no rules. I have 3 rules of parenting, and I've written columns about this, but I have 3 rules of parenting, period. Don't be a punk. Don't be a bully. Don't be disrespectful.
I like it. Keep it simple.
That's it. And if you think about it, everything falls under those categories some way, somehow. And those are his only 3 rules. Period.
I love that style, by the way, that self-regulation style, because at some point you're not going to be there. And I think that's been a huge failure in a whole generation of kids, and to no fault of their parents. That's all they knew,
right?
Is that, you dictate how they would spend their lives. I think you're raising adjusted, healthy, children, or a child in this point, your son. And I applaud you for that. That is the best way to have a very thoughtful and self-regulatory child.
Thank you. Yeah, I think, I was kind of raised that way. And I think obviously it's important to let them be kids,
Oh, of course.
But my dad, I was raised with the kind of attitude of like, you're going to get to 18 and life's going to suck and be hard soon enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're going to do 2 things. We're going to let you enjoy the fact that you're a kid. Life shouldn't be tough. I don't think any 9-year-old should have a tough life. But at the same time, I want to instill in them that, hey, life's not always going to be like this.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're gently easing them, giving them those tools that they're going to need to self-regulate and create a life of their own. I think we should do that as early as possible, because we treat them like children a little bit too much. And every family is different. Every child is different. But I think we need to explore this a little bit more.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome.
Exactly.
Awesome. So, okay, we went over your best dad's superpower, and we got a lot of really awesome content. What's your worst, and how do you mitigate it?
Oh goodness. My worst is probably patience. And I mitigate it. I'm well aware of it. I mean, I'm definitely, if you hadn't figured out, I can talk forever. And
it works.
and I get things done. I'm very type A. I dive into a project and I get it done. And I have to remind myself that while my son is ridiculously smart, and he's a great kid, and he gets stuff done as well, I have to remind myself, okay, dude, he's 9.
Yeah.
And so it's patience and I think being aware of it, we all have, weakness, whatever you want to call it, our downfalls. But I think the big thing is being aware of it. And so
yes, recognition.
Exactly. And I know that's my thing. And I mean, there's times, heck, probably every day where I'll start to say something and I'm like, nope, just chill out, dude. He's 9. Just chill out. And never from a nasty, mean way, but just, okay, he'll be cleaning his room and I want him to clean his room faster. And I have to look in the mirror and go, dude, shut up to myself.
Yeah. I fall into that myself. My son's 3, and I want bigger and better. And I want, I'm impetuous. Patience, by the way, to that question is a very popular answer. We all suffer with it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's, and that's the thing. And I think, I think we could be easier on ourselves about it, in that sense of don't get mad at your downfalls, at your things that you don't like. Just learn how to deal with them.
Yeah, totally. I love it. Well said. And okay, I got one more question and then we're going to wrap it, but let's dream. Let's dream for a minute. What's a bucket list item for you, your son, or your family? Very specifically.
A bucket list item for us, we actually have one big one right now we're trying to make happen, is to go spend 2 or 3 weeks in Singapore.
Wow.
We have my son's BFF, if you will. They were friends growing up, moved about a year ago to Singapore with his family, and the boy's father and I are very close friends as well. Mm-hmm. And so we're trying to figure out a trip to get to Singapore, and the family's actually Australian. So we are trying to figure out a way to go to Singapore for a week and then, jump on down to Australia for a week and kind of make almost like a 2-3 week trip out of it. Needless to say, I need to figure that out from a budget standpoint.
Of course.
But that's a huge bucket list item that's on our radar right now. I don't know if it's going to, happen anytime soon, but it's definitely a bucket list item. And my son, for whatever reason, has a huge desire to live and spend a decent amount of time in London.
Huh.
I was lucky. I did a television show and I got to live in London for a year in the mid 90s, and it was great. And my son, for whatever reason, has this, he wants to go spend a good amount of time. He's fascinated with everything British at this point for whatever reason.
That's great. Maybe a high school study abroad program or a college study abroad program would really just let him explore that to the fullest extent.
Yeah, who knows? Exactly, right.
That's great. And you said something about this is not going to happen anytime soon. That's the idea, right? I mean, we have to have this goal to work toward. And so each little step along the way, each day in the mirror, we look at ourselves and, our situation and get there. And that's what makes it worthwhile. Mm-hmm. It's the journey.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's absolutely the journey. Yeah.
Awesome. Rob, I sincerely appreciate everything that we've talked about and connecting with you personally. I can't thank you enough for your time. How do we give to you? How do we connect with you? What can we do for you as Rad Dads?
You know what? Keep being Rad Dads is the first thing, right? For your audience, anybody who's listening, keep proudly holding that torch and holding it higher and being, I hate to say it, but I see so many dads who are frankly not rad.
Yeah.
And I see so many dads who are just, bozos, to put it nicely. And I think that any dad who steps up and, takes responsibility, especially outside of the norm, mm-hmm. In the sense of being a single dad. And I remember people saying, I've had my son since he was 14 months. And I remember people saying, oh, Jesus, you won't figure this out. You got to change diapers. You got to do whatever. And I was like, you know what? You watch me. I'll figure it out.
I love that attitude. That's my attitude too. That's cool. Just watch me.
Exactly. So I think, to me, keep stepping it up. If you're a dad, no matter what your situation is, you're married, you're single, whatever the scenario is, step it up as a dad and and give that, our kids learn by example, boys and girls. And, it's, I can't think of the exact phrase off the top of my head, but I love basically the thought of kids are going to learn more, not from our words, but by our actions. And it's so true.
Absolutely.
I can tell my son something all day long, but if he watches it in action and he watches me doing it, then he's probably going to do it.
He's not going to watch intentionally. They do. That's what they pattern off of, imprint off. It's just ingrained. And so be the person that you want your son to become, and he will, or daughter.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. So so for me, I mean, that would be, my one thing is if you're a parent, hell, not just a dad, a mom, but, step up, get involved, be there. Life is too short. They're not going to be there. They're going to be 20 before you know it. You're going to wish you had, and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Just, show up, be in the moment.
Never
be there.
Never leave an opportunity for regret ever. So,
yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It's just been a whirlwind. I could probably talk about this all day, and it sounds like you could too. I really appreciate your time and sharing your wisdom and nuggets with the Rad Dads out there.
Absolutely. My pleasure. And anybody, people can go check out my website, which you said is studioyoungblood.com. And I also write a weekly parenting column for a national blog, family focused blog. I write a weekly column from kind of a dad's perspective. It's a mom's blog, which is funny. And I'm the male voice there. And I write a weekly
I love it.
piece that's a family focused blog that's there as well. But anytime I can help you or anybody else, I encourage anybody to reach out, even if it's, in that sense of, okay, I just need a voice, and I get this a lot in the sense of forget the work side, forget, all of that. We all make our money, we do our thing. But in all sincerity, I love it when I have a parent who reaches out to me and says, can I just get 10 minutes to pick your brain about something?
That's amazing.
Absolutely. Because we're all in this together. So absolutely, and that's the taking the high road, karma, whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm such a big fan and so love kids that I want every kid to have a decent chance. And if it means that, I can spend 15 minutes on the phone with a dad who's having a tough day or having a tough moment, man, that's worth it.
That's just amazing. And I that's something that I'm trying to do with our Facebook group. But I'm going to tell you right now, Rad Dads, as an inspiration from our guest, Rob Youngblood, I'm going to open myself up to you too. If you want to connect with me directly, I'll give you 10 minutes of my time. All right. Just message me through the Facebook, group, and we'll make it happen. All right. I am there for you in not only over the iTunes airwaves, so to speak, but in person. I am a real person, and I'm really concerned, and I want us all to rise with the tide.
Absolutely. And I'm in that group as well. So feel free to, shoot me a message also. Don't hesitate. I'm same way.
Oh, man. Very, very distinct honor to connect with you, Mr. Youngblood, and appreciate you and everything you've done and everything you're doing. So thanks
Absolutely.
for joining
my
us.
pleasure.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. Thank you so much. I had a good time. And, if you ever need anything, let me know.
Thank you so much. Sequest out.
All right.
Well, that's it for this episode of We Rad Dads. I sincerely thank you for joining us. Don't forget to look us up at www.weraddads.com. There you can find links to our Facebook page and Twitter account. Got a question or comment? It may be featured. Email me, Walter, at weraddads.com. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks again for joining us. And remember, stay up, stay connected, and stay rad, dads.